Blog Talk Radio.
Mi chemo apura kanu apura nut neye ojira da medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi mu Odwirafo Odwiraman. Greetings to all apura kani apura people, meaning Africans, Black people. Today is Odwira Day, Purification Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America within Odwiraman, the purified nation, Apurakani people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We are opening up the chat room right now. If you have any questions or comments, if you like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised and we can interact with you. For those who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joda, Monday nights, we have Akhan song, ancient, authentic Akhan ancestral religion, where we deal specifically with the Akhan expression of ancestral religion. First and foremost, because we are Akhan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akhan ancestral religion, cosmology, culture, ritual practice, the nature of the Abosom, the deities, the nature of the Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, Nananom Nsamanfo, the nature of Nyamewa, and Nyame, the Great Mother and Great Father, Supreme Being, and so forth. So we deal specifically with that information, tracing our culture going back to ancient Khanat, which is a title of ancient Nubia. Our people migrated from Khanat thousands of years ago to the western part of the continent, reestablished the Khanat Empire, so-called Ghanat Empire, in the western part of the continent. Hundreds of years later, we migrated further south towards the forest belt in the region of today's contemporary Ghana and Ivory Coast. And hundreds of years after that, some of our people were forced from that region into the Western Hemisphere during the Mmusuo Kesie, the Great Diversity, the enslavement era. And this is how some of our people ended up in the United States and other places. We maintain our ancestral religious practice. Thus, the Akhan ancestral religion is called Winti in Suriname in South America. It is called Obia in Jamaica. It is called Hoodoo in the United States. Hoodoo coming from the Akhan term Undu, which means medicine from fruits, plant life, mineral life, and so forth, but also to become heavy with the spirit. We also use the term Kanche, which is an Akhan term for uttering incantations to bring the spirits of the Abosom and Nananom Nsamanfo, the deities and spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors down through spirit possession and communication. Kanche became corrupted into Kanje and Conjure, so Undu and Kanche became pronounced Hoodoo and Conjure in North America. So this is the Akhan ancestral religion. So we deal with that on Joda Monday nights. On Awukuda Wednesday nights, Akwada, we have Egua Marketplace, where we showcase Apurakani businesses, organizations, and institutions. Those who have maintained their ancestral religious values in the context of their service in the community. Those who are positively serving the Apurakani community with products and services, but also maintaining our ancestral religious values. We showcase a number of businesses on the show. When you look at our Akwamu Economic Development Model page, you'll see the list of businesses with their websites and the links to their interviews and so forth, and we will have more coming up. We also have published our Akwamu Economic Development Model, which is an approach to economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. In the Akwamu Economic Development Model, we have the process, the strategy, starve the beast and feed the pride. So we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have potentially wasted with the whites in our spring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We reallocate those funds away from the white businesses and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We're targeting one Afurakani business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks for optimal capital infusion. And as we always say, if you transfer $10 away from a white business and direct it to a black business during the course of a week, that's $10 when 1,000 people engage that process because they're starving the beast and feeding the pride and directing those funds, reallocating them to the business of the week, then that's a $10,000 infusion of capital in the course of 7 days for a black business. And when they have that kind of infusion of capital without having to rely on a white bank loan or line of credit and so forth, an infusion of capital away from white businesses directly into the business in our community, then they can hire black people within the business instantaneously so they can have full-time or part-time employment. They can expand their products and services to us, serve us at a greater capacity. If we do not engage this process, then by default, we leave that $10,000 in the hands of our enemies, the whites in our offspring. By default, we finance our own oppression. So we must starve the beast and feed the pride on a weekly basis. On Yauda, Thursday night, also called Yada Abada, Thursday night, we have Amain Sem, affairs of the nation. So we deal with specific issues affecting us as Odwiraman, the purified Odwiraman nation, mine in the land of the setting sun, the Western Hemisphere. Odwiraman is Afurakani people in the Western Hemisphere as a collective. Because we are a collective, a unique coalescing of Afurakani people in this specific region of the body of the Earth Mother, and we have interfaced with her in this region. We've interfaced with the unique expression and manifestation of the Aboson, the Orisha Vodou, as they manifest in this region of the Earth Mother's body. We've blended ancestral blood circles, allowing ancestresses and ancestors to return through these blended blood circles in this region of the Earth's body. So therefore, we have formed and forged a locative identity rooted in that reality. And therefore, our approach to ancestral religious practice, culture, nation building, and so forth is rooted in our locative identities. Afurakani people who have migrated or were forced to migrate into this region, but interfacing with this sacred Earth Mother in this particular region of her body. So we have a nationist approach. Amaniye nationism, the purification of nationalism. We have a nationist approach to solving our problems, rooted in our ancestral religious cosmology, which is also rooted in our expression of that cosmology as Odwiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani people, black people in the Western Hemisphere. So this is what we deal with on Yauda Thursday night, Amain Sem, affairs of the nation, current events, current obstacles or perceived obstacles that are facing or confronting our community. We address those so we can move forward in a harmonious fashion. Tonight is Benada or Abenada, which is Tuesday. Odwira is the broadcast. Odwira means purification. It also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification. Those are the definitions in the Akhan language. Those are the same definitions in the language of ancient Khanit and Kemet. In the Medutu, we show that Jira means purification, and ancient Kemet, it also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification. So we purify concepts, purify culture, purify cosmology, understanding, and so forth. Ancestral religion, Afurakani, or African ancestral religion, in essence, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject, to hate, to repulse, in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. ODWIRA, purification, operationalizes Nanason. Purification, ODWIRA, operationalizes ancestral religion, our ritual practice of incorporating law and restoring balance. Our culture as Afurakani people, African Black people, wherever we exist, is the divine acceptance, the divine law or love or acceptance of order, and the divine rejection, the divine hate, repulsion of disorder. So we accept that which is orderly, we reject that which is disorderly. We accept that which is in harmony with divine law, and we reject, we hate, we repulse that which is out of harmony with divine order. The incorporation of divine law, the restoration of divine balance, the acceptance or the law or love of order, the hatred, the rejection of disorder. That's our culture. So we seek to align every thought, intention, and action every moment of every day with divine order. We accept that which is harmonious, reject that which is disharmonious and its purveyors. That includes, of course, the white narrow spring. This is talking about divine law, love, and divine hate, the expansive and contractive poles of divine order. They are male and female divinities of law, which is Ma'at and Ma'at. They are male and female divinities of divine hate, which is Heru Bedeti and Sechima Sekhmet, also called Benna and Abenna in the Akhan tradition. Law, which is also called love in our traditional languages and culture, is the expansive pole of order. Hate is the contractive pole of order. So when we talk about our culture, it is the acceptance of order, the rejection or hatred of disorder and its purveyors. When we seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day, when we make mistakes, we can engage in the ritual practice of incorporating law and restoring order. When we're talking about legitimate mistakes, when some people cross the line beyond legitimate mistakes, then there's no returning to divine order. They need to be exterminated, eradicated. But the average person, Black person, people only, of course, when we make certain mistakes, legitimate mistakes, then we seek to realign ourselves with order. We incorporate law through ritual, restore balance through ritual so that we can get back in harmony with that culture, that everyday living of every thought, every intention, every action being placed in alignment with divine order every moment of every day. So ODWIRA, that's what this broadcast is about, purification of cosmology, culture, ritual practice, and so forth. We have an announcement coming up, as we have talked about, on March 12th here in Washington, D.C. is our second annual Etchisign Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference. All-day conference. It's a free conference. Of course, we're dealing with Etchisign. We don't deal with ancestral religious conversion. We don't convert anybody to our ancestral religion. When you convert somebody to something, you're transforming them into something that normally they would never embrace. That's why fake religions with their fictional cartoon characters like Jesus, Yeshua, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Allah, Yahweh, all of these fictional cartoon characters who never existed in any form or of any race whatsoever, they must convert because they're talking about fake religion and false cosmology. When we engage in our culture, we're engaged in Etchisign. Etchi means back, sign means to return. Etchisign means to return back. Reversion, ancestral religious reversion, returning or reverting back to our original pristine state. That original pact we made with Aminet and Amen, the great mother and great father, supreme being, as cells within that great divine body to execute a specific function within that great divine body. We're talking about Etchisign ancestral religious reversion. So we're going to have presenters dealing with ancestral religion born of our blood circles here in the Western Hemisphere. We will be presenting on Hoodoo, the Akhan ancestral religion in North America. Queen Kalinda Laveau will be presenting on voodoo, Fon, and Ebe ancestral religion born of the blood circles of our people in North America. Over 100 years prior to the Haitians migrating into Louisiana, voodoo was already in Louisiana. It's been here for hundreds of years since we first stepped foot on the shores of North America, carried in our blood circles. We just confirmed that Mama Mawusi Ashakir and Montu Ra Ashakir will be coming to talk about Juju, the Yoruba ancestral religion preserved in the blood circles of our people here in North America. So we will be updating the site with that information as well. We will have all-day vendors. We have our vending Egua Marketplace at the site. So, of course, the event is free and open to Afurakani people only. You can go to the Etchi sign page on our website to register for the conference. Registration is free, but it is required. You'll see the links directly there to register. We do have a couple of tables left. If you would like to vend, go to the Etchi sign page for that. We only have 10 vending spaces, so 8 of them are gone. We have 2 vending spaces left. We provide 1 6-foot table and 2 chairs, $30 for the entire day, and you'll be vending from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Presentations all day, and it's going to be a great turnout. We will be giving away a free copy of our new book, Etchi Sign, which will be released on that day, which has articles dealing with various aspects of ancestral religion. It will also include the various businesses, organizations, and institutions that are in the marketplace. But also, if you would like to place an ad in that journal, you can look on the page as well. You can take out ad space in the book as it's released. And of course, that book will be on our website as a free download as well as for purchase and softcover. We've had over 3 million hits on our website over the past 12 months. So when you place your ad in our journal, the free ebook version will be open to hundreds of thousands of views from our people, all here as well as around the world. All of that information is on the Etchi Sign page. Now, we're going to get into tonight's broadcast. And the focus for tonight, Amarukafo Adebisa Adwumadi. African American, Afurakani people in America, or African American Amarukafo Ancestral Divination film project. We released a few days ago our information regarding our crowdfunding campaign for our film. We're producing the blood circles of our people here in North America. Maintaining ancestral religious practices, maintaining Hoodoo tradition, which is the Akhan tradition, the Juju tradition, which is the Yoruba tradition, the Voodoo tradition, which is the Ebe and Fon tradition, the Nganga and Nganga tradition, which is the Fang and Bakongo traditions, the Wanga tradition, which is the Ovambo ancestral tradition, and so forth. We're going to have a number of different people interviewed who have maintained ancestral religious divinatory practices, forms of oracular divination that have been passed down through our blood circles here in the Western Hemisphere, not dependent on anyone outside of our blood circles for our ancestral religion. We are not dependent on traveling to the continent of Africa to become initiated and bring shrines to America. We're not dependent on going to the Caribbean. We're not dependent on going to South America. We're not dependent on people who have done that. That does not legitimize your ancestral religious practice. It is impossible for that to legitimize your practice. The only thing that legitimizes your ancestral religious practice are the ancestresses and ancestors of your direct blood circle who have passed these traditions down through your direct spirit genetic blood circle. If you do not have a tradition or have not restored a tradition based on your blood circle exactly where you are, then you don't have a legitimate tradition. What you have is imitating other people who live on the continent and how they have expressed their culture to this point, or other people in the Caribbean who have expressed their culture in a specific manner up to this point. When we were forced away from the continent of Afuraka a few hundred years ago, the manner in which the traditions were being practiced, the manner in which we were practicing divination, the manner in which we were engaging in ritual prayer. When we were forced over here, it is that tradition, as we practiced it at that particular point in time, that was fossilized in the bones and blood of our ancestresses and ancestors, us. That's a time stamp, a 300-year-old time stamp, the way it was practiced then. And that tradition is what we have passed on intergenerationally and transcarnationally since we have been here in North America. Whatever happened after we left a few hundred years ago, left the continent, and how the traditions have changed, how some of them have incorporated corruption from Christianity, Islam, and white culture in general, we were already gone when that happened. So the way we practice the tradition is based on how it was practiced before those corruptions entered. And we've passed down this pristine tradition here. Some of our people, of course, especially around 100 years ago when the whites in our spring began to really promote Christianity, and then later Islam and Judaism and all kinds of other nonsense in North America, some of our people fell into that nonsense, of course, as we can see, and got heavily involved in it. Some people were more peripherally involved in the nonsense and tried to incorporate that into hoodoo and juju and so forth. But of course, that's illegitimate. We've purged all of that nonsense out. We still have our real traditions, full functioning traditions, priests and priestesses, conjure men, conjure women, Odumafo, Odwirafo, Odunsinifo, which literally translate as hoodoo man, hoodoo woman, root worker, root doctor, and so forth. In the Akhan tradition, we have all of those functions here in North America. We have the Gufa doctors we talked about in a previous broadcast. Gufa comes from Kufa, or the Akumfo in Akhan tradition, which is the priest or priestess. We have the Akhan man, Akhan woman, conjure woman, Odumafo, Oduma person, which is the Oduman, the healer, and so forth. All of these different titles, functions, different aspects of priesthood, priestesshood, maintained in the hoodoo tradition. The same is true with the Juju and Yoruba and so forth. So, when we talk about AMARUKAFO ADEBISA, when we use the term Amaruka, if you look in the Inca tradition, for example, they call the plumed serpent or the feathered serpent Amaru. And this is the land Ka of Amaru. Amaru Ka, the land Ka of Amaru. This is where Amaruka or America comes from. It does not come from Amerigo Vespucci, who was christened as Albericus Vespucci in Europe. This is a title that's been used for thousands of years. But when you talk about the Inca, we're not talking about some Asians who immigrated and invaded this hemisphere. Of course, when you look at ancient Mexico and these different areas of South America and North America and so forth, thousands of years ago, our people were here building pyramids and reestablishing the same culture we brought from ancient Khanid and Kemet, so-called Nubia and Egypt. Same tradition, same culture. The Asians come much later. The Asians come thousands of years later and invade thousands of years later, waging war against our people. Typically, we're not successful against our people, but what happened to wipe our people out is exactly what happened in Europe, to wipe the Europeans out. In the so-called medieval times in Europe, in the so-called 1300s, the early 1300s, they were struck with the so-called Black Death or the bubonic plague, and it swept through Europe. And within 5 years, it is estimated that 1/3 to 1/2 of the entire population of Europe was wiped out through the plague. If you can imagine between 13,012 and 13,017, or so-called 2012 and now 2017. over 330 million people in America. Imagine if over 165 million people in America died since 2012, and half the population disappeared because they were all falling out and dying with black boils all over their bodies, and nobody could do anything about it but watch them die. That's what happened in Europe, but also the same thing happened in North, Central, and South America in ancient times. The same plagues hit North America and wiped out millions. This is the reason why we had a population thousands of years ago that was vibrant. The Europeans, as well as the Asians, came over. It wasn't their military that destroyed our populations. It was their filthy diseases. That's what destroyed the populations by the millions. Wiped out whole villages and cities and towns of people by the millions. And by the time the Europeans came through, they decided that they needed people to work, and they began to force our people over here because of the war that was going on the continent. At the same time that they were forcing our people here, the so-called 16th through 19th centuries, those 300 years, and forced millions of our people over here. At the same time, from the so-called 16th to the 19th century in Europe, white Christians primarily were being enslaved all through the Barbary Coast slave trade. That means brainwashed black people who had got involved in Islam in connection with their white Arab so-called allies. They were enslaving white Christians primarily, over 4 million of them during that same period, enslaving them all throughout the so-called Barbary Coast. And they call it the Barbary Coast slave trade, and so-called white slaves with Muslim masters and so forth. So exactly the same time period that was happening there, the enslavement of our people who got caught as prisoners of war. Two groups of our people were fighting on the continent. The ones who were captured as prisoners of war, the cracker would buy the prisoners of war from the ones who captured those prisoners, then bring them over here. It wasn't because they had a military swept onto the continent and beat everybody up and took us into slavery. They were never able to do that. They were too weak to do that. They had to wait for us to fight one another and purchase the prisoners of war and then enslave them. No different than our people fighting each other now. And then we call the police. Some of our people get locked up because we called the police, and the police come and lock our people up, and then they make them work. This is the new slavery, of course. So this is what was taking place. But they brought our people over here after the plagues and so forth, and then this new wave over the past few hundred years of our people coming to North America by the millions and so forth during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And then this is how we ended up populating all of North America and so forth, and Caribbean and Central America and parts of South America. Now, it's important to understand that, because in the ancient times in the Western Hemisphere, when our people were here before the plagues hit, we established civilization, we established the foundation of civilization, practice ancestral religion. When we talk about the plumed serpent, and they say Amaru, or Ameru, and Ameru Ka, the land, the highland Ka of the plumed serpent, that plumed serpent or feathered serpent, here is that same feathered serpent, or the great divinity that can have the serpent on his head with the two tall plumes of feathers shooting straight up into the air. That divinity is Amen. He's also called Amen Ra. Amen Ra operates through the great Ka, the raised land. Amen Ra Ka, or Amerika, became Amaruka in the Western Hemisphere. Amen, or Amit, also means west, land of the setting sun, the hidden land. This is why the star, so-called Saturn, is called Seba Amit, the star of the Amit, or the star of the west. So Amit, Ra, Ka, land of the west, the land of the setting sun, the land of Amen, and so forth. This is a designation that we utilized thousands of years ago when they talked about the feathered serpent back then. talking about the same feathered or plumed serpent from ancient Khanit and Kemet. We're worshiping the same divinity. And of course, we have Amenet Raek, the Great Mother. So, but those plumes or feathers on the top of the head of Amen are distinguished and distinguishing characteristics. We go into detail about that cosmology in our book, Afrika, the origin of the term Africa. In part 3, we show the etymological origin of the name Amaruka, or Amaruka, and so forth. We also must show that the Ra, of course, is the creator and creatress. They are subordinate to Amen and Amenet. Sometimes Ra will take the form, and the name is spelled with the sacred lion, and that sacred lion is called Ru, and that's also a sacred form of Amen. So you have Amen Raka, Amen Ruka, and so forth. We go into detail about all of that. So this is why we use that terminology of Amarukafo, Amen Raka, the land of the west, the land of the setting sun, the hidden land, and so forth. The Afuraika is Amaruka. We become Amarukafo or Amarukafo, living in the western region of the Earth Mother's body. We're talking about the region of the Earth Mother. We're not talking about the political structure called America established by the whites and their offspring. We're talking about this land mass that has vibrant energy of the Earth Mother that's been here, of course, for millions of years. When we interface with Asase Afua, the fertile Earth Mother, she's called Asase Afua. She's called Asase Nebedetepe Nechikamet. She's called Asase Afua and Akhan, the same Asase divinity. The fertile Earth Mother, because you also have Asase Ya, which is the barren Earth Mother, the strong, stern Earth Mother. That's Asase Nebedetepe Nechikamet. Whereas Asase Nebetpet is Asase Ya and Akhan, Asase Nebetpet and Ancient Kemet. Asase Afua is the fertile earth mother. She's Asase Nebet Hetepet in Ancient Kemet. So Asase Nebet Hetepet is one divinity. Asase Nebet Pet is the other. Asase Afua, the same divinity in Akhan. Asase Ya, the other divinity, the two sister earth mother divinities. They're called Onile and Yewa, the Yoruba tradition, for example. Two different earth mother divinities. Onile being the fertile earth mother, Yewa dealing with the grave, the barren earth mother and so forth, the stern judge and all of that. Same divinities. So when we interface with her in this region, the manner in which her energy moves in this region, and the plant life, mineral life, and even animal life is slightly different here than it is on the continent. Then when we eat that plant life and mineral life and take that into our bones and blood and so forth, animal life, we interface with a specific expression of the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the divinities, as they manifest in this region. They're sacred animal totems in this region, consuming the food and game in this region, that go into our blood cells, going into the map of our bodies. We become possessed by a unique expression of the Abosom in this region, which transforms the cells of our bodies when we're possessed, and then we have children of the same transformed, energetically transformed cells when they're born. So they're the firstborn children that are indigenous to the land in the real sense. You can only be tied to the land if you can be possessed by the deities as they manifest in the land. No Asian, no migrant Asian can be possessed by any deity, any force in nature, so they can never be indigenous anywhere. It doesn't matter where they migrate to, invade. No Eurasian, no European, no Asian, no non-Afrikani individual can be indigenous to any place because they cannot be possessed by the deities of these land masses as they manifest in these land masses. They cannot be possessed by any deity. Only black people can become indigenized to different parts of the world by interfacing with that region of the Earth Mother and being possessed by the deities and binding themselves to those regions through spirit possession. And then having children whose bodies resonate at that frequency because the sperm cell and the ovum cell that has been transformed by the energy of the region through possession, once they form the new child's body, their body itself is a vessel that resonates at the frequency of the Abosom as they manifest in that region of the world. So this is why we say Amarukafo. And Adebisa is an Akhan term for divination. Adie means things, objects, deeds, entities. Bisa means to ask. Adebisa means things that are asked or inquired about. That's oracular divination. So when we say mere ko bisa, I am going, mere ko bisa, to ask or to consult, that means I'm going to consult the Abosom through oracular divination. Adwumadi, Adwuma means work. It also means to establish something, to work, project. So Adwumadi means project. So Amarukafo Adebisa Adwumadi, quote unquote, African American ancestral divination. We want people to recognize that there's an ancestral divination system, a number of systems that our people, Amarukafo, or quote unquote, African Americans have. Most people never heard the term African American ancestral religion. They think about African ancestral religion. They think about ancestral religion in Cuba, in Haiti, in South America, in Brazil, Suriname, and other places. But when it comes to us, people assume that we never maintained anything except for voodoo in New Orleans. And then some try to pretend like we didn't maintain that either, like it's a new thing. You'll see on websites like the Crackers website, Lucky Mojo, and others, they'll pretend like the voodoo tradition in New Orleans didn't exist until recently, and they manufactured a new tourist voodoo tradition, and it didn't exist until a few decades ago when people wanted to start making money. But nobody maintained voodoo from the time the Haitians came up and after that. It's only based on Haitian voodoo, but there's no such thing as New Orleans voodoo. This is what these crackers will say on their websites, that there was no voodoo in New Orleans until people started making some things up a few decades ago to generate money from tourists. Totally inaccurate. Voodoo has been there before the Haitians ever got there, from the 1600s, 1700s and on. So our people have maintained Amarukafo Adebisa, or quote unquote African American ancestral divination, and quote unquote African American ancestral religion. Some project will be going into detail about that. We released the first trailer for the film yesterday, and yet I say to everyone, it's a great response so far. It's been over 1,100 views already on Facebook in the past 24 hours. People really appreciated the trailer, and we're going to have a second trailer as well prior to the film being released. The film will be featuring Voodoo Queen Kalinda Laveau out of New Orleans, Wabet Sechat Tut Ankwajet, who is out of Miami, will be dealing with the Wanga tradition, which is Ovambo, part of the Gullah constellation. Divinatory practice there. Voodoo Queen Kalinda Laveau will be dealing with divination in the voodoo tradition, born of the blood circles of ancestral voodoo in Louisiana prior to the Haitian migration. We have Rekit Kajara Niyayad Nebehet, who is the founderess of Raseki, quote unquote Kemetic Reiki, laying hands from the traditional perspective. That comes out of the Fang ancestral religion. Fang, F-A-N-G, Fang, the people in Gabon and parts of Cameroon and so forth, using the energy that they call Ki, that same energy, which is the energy of Ra and Ra'et. One of the titles of Ra is Ki in ancient Kemet, and that same Ki energy, of course, the whites in our spring call it Chi and Ki in Asia because they stole that directly from our tradition. When they say Re-Ki means universal and Ki means energy. Re, of course, is a corruption of Ra and Ra'et, and Ki is a title of Ra in the Medusa. We've shown that in our book, Ankh, the Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, the Origin and Nature of the Chakra. We show the Medusa, the hieroglyphs, proving that. So she's bringing back that tradition from the Fang ancestral practice. In Gengai, as it's called in Fang, in Ganga, as it's called in the Bakongo tradition and so forth, and we still have the Ngangas over here in the Western Hemisphere, in Gengai and so forth. She'll be dealing with that. Mama Mawusi Ashakir, dealing with the Juju tradition, oracular divination in the Juju tradition, the so-called Yoruba tradition in North America. And then we will be dealing with the Akhan ancestral religion, hoodoo, and oracular divination born of our blood circles here as well. So all 5 of us will be in the film. We will be filming on location in each one of the various cities, as well as other cities that have true historical connections to the hoodoo and juju and gullah and geechee and various traditions. Our goal is to begin the filming next month. We're going to complete that within a couple of months, traveling to the different spaces, doing the interviews and so forth. And then our tentative release date is in June. And we can get that done because the key is once we do our interviews and so forth and to do the different filming over the next couple of months between February and March and possibly part way into April, but mainly in February or March, then the rest will simply be the editing process. Of course, that is an extensive process as well, but we'll go through that between April and May and in part of June, and then we can release. That's the goal in June. We're having a crowdfunding campaign for the movie, the film. So when you see the trailer, and people have really appreciated the trailer, we're going to have one more trailer, and we'll have the presenters, those who will be interviewed, speaking for a few seconds, just showing, basically what they will be talking about. That'll be coming, a little bit later in a couple of months when we do the filming. So we'll release clips from interviews at that point and put that trailer out. But for now, we just released the first trailer, and people are really feeling it and sending it around and so forth. And we laid the foundation for everything that will be talked about in the film. Link in the chat room real quick, just so you can see. We have the crowdfunding campaign on fundraiser.com, FUNDRAZR.com/AMARUKAFO _ADEBISA. So we're going to put this in the chat room real quick. And of course, if you have any questions in the chat room, got to sign in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised. Start asking your questions now. The key is we want to raise the funds. We need to raise the funds, and the purpose for raising the funds, as we show on the fundraising site page, is for the specific kind of equipment that we use. Of course, we could use the regular camera that we already have, basic, Sony kinds of, camcorders and things like that. But we want to use the kind of equipment necessary that will be professional equipment for documentary filmmaking. That, as well as the software, editing software, and so forth for the editing process. So we're raising funds for that, as well as for the filming on location to the different cities that we must go to. We're going to the different cities because we're going to film each individual in the place where their shrines are seated. So we must go, number 1, to the place where their shrines are. Secondly, we want to visit these sacred seats of hoodoo, voodoo, juju, gullah geechee culture, wanga, and gangan in North America. These are sacred areas. When you go to certain regions of New Orleans, these are sacred areas where we've been engaged in these ritual practices for hundreds of years. You go to certain places in Mississippi and Alabama and South Carolina and Georgia and Florida, as well as in the north. There was a great migration north. Over 6 million of our people migrated from the south over a number of decades into northern industrial cities like Detroit and Chicago and Philadelphia and New York and so forth. And we carried our ancestral religious practices with us. So we became urban hoodoos, urban juju people, urban wanga people. And the manner in which we practiced tradition was based on these new urban environments. And there are seats of hoodoo and juju and voodoo and wanga and in Gangan and so forth, all over in the north. So we must go to the sacred seats of our traditions and film in those sacred seats, as well as the fact we must go to where the shrines of the people are who are our presenters and so forth will be interviewed and talking about their ritual practices. So that's what the travel is based on. Some of it we'll have to fly. Much of it we're going to get on the road, hit the road and so forth, and go out and do these filming and spend a few days in each place, not only filming, but then also going to the different seats and filming in those areas, getting that true historical information from sacred sites. We have sacred sites in our own ancestral religious traditions. Of course, we don't go to the fiction cartoon character pseudo-religious sites like Mecca or Bethlehem and all this other nonsense, because that's foolishness. But we also don't have to depend on going to only sacred sites on the continent. When you travel there, of course, you would do that, because those are shrines. When you travel to the continent, you not only go to certain shrines where our ancestresses and ancestors were, where they walked the land, your actual great-grandmothers or great-grandfathers before they were forced over here. So there's power there. Their bodies are buried there. Your great-great-great-grandmothers and grandfathers in those areas. So when you walk over those areas, there's energy there that's connected directly to you. But even your own body is buried there. Because the last time you were here living on the continent, the last time you lived on the continent, whether it was 200 years ago or 400 years ago, the last time you died on the continent before you reincarnated hundreds of years later through your blood circle here, you lived somewhere on the continent, you died somewhere on the continent, and your body is somewhere on that continent. And you'll be drawn to the area where your body is. And because your body is buried there, that previous vessel you took up residence in, that region, as well as the places where your other relatives are buried, that region of the Earth Mother becomes the most sacred for you, because that's where your people are buried. That energy is powerful. That's why the lands where we are buried in here in North America, Asaseyafu, the fertile Earth Mother, and Asaseya, the barren Earth Mother, of course, she's sacred all over, her body across the planet. But becomes especially sacred. Certain regions become especially sacred to us and magnetic for us because our people are buried in these regions. And their energy is radiating from the places where they are buried. These places are sacred for us. They are ancestral shrines for us. And they are true historical, even just the places, including the places where we practice tradition and generated energy for hundreds of years, and generated the motivation and power and insight to be able to wage war against the whites and their offspring and massacre them and force the end of enslavement. These are sacred sites for our people that we need to make, quote unquote, pilgrimages to, or we visit there to pour libation and connect with our Nsamanfo who dwell there. So we need to go to those sacred sites. That's part of that process. So we're raising funds for that. You'll see the kind of information just based on the first trailer, and each one of our interviewees, each one of our participants, each one of our healeresses who are participating, they're going to have in-depth information, not only showing that ritual practice, but showing the true story of how it developed and manifested in their blood circle and so forth. So this is what we're going to be engaged in. I just want to look on the chat room real quick to make sure we didn't miss anything. So when you go to the Adebisa page, and first we want to say, Yedase, we thank you. We've already had a few people, I think so far it's been 9 people who made a contribution to the effort so far. So Yedase, we appreciate that. We're having that funding drive. As soon as we can raise the first portion of the funds, we can begin to gather the equipment by the end of the month. But even prior to that, the month is coming up, end of the month is coming up very quickly, of course. And then we can start scheduling the trips to film on location in February. So that's the first part of the process. And then the second part of the process is, the editing, which is going to be an extensive process as well. Yet I'll say to those first 9 people who made a contribution actually yesterday, as we released the trailer yesterday. Within the first hour or two, a couple of people began to contribute, and it's been happening since then. So we have enough people within just the people who listen to broadcasts, just the people who are on Facebook, Odwiraman, Purification Network, and so forth on the Facebook group, Akhan, Ancient Authentic Akhan Ancestral Religion group on Facebook. We have enough people there, those of you who listen to the broadcast periodically and download them from YouTube when you can't catch the live broadcast and so forth. There are enough people right there, just a couple of hundred people. It's really enough to raise all of the funds to get the project done. And when the project is done, of course, we will have screens in different cities. It will also be available for purchase. Of course, it's going to be a very minimal, purchase price, nothing exorbitant, of course. So those who contribute, of course, you'll get a copy of you don't have to purchase the movie. We will send you a copy of that, of course. You can get into those screenings as well. So we have a lot of plans for what's going to be taking place. But right now we're in that fundraising drive so we can get this content out. So if you like the trailer, if you like what you saw, please begin to contribute. You can start right now. You can go to AMARUKAFO ADEBISA, the fundraising campaign, on fundraiser.com, fundraiser.com/AMARUKAFO_ADEBISA. We're going to take a call. Excuse me. We're going to take a call on the phone line real quick. Michiabo on the phone line, number 6482. You had a question or a comment?
Hey, Ted, brother. Can you hear me? I was wondering if, I know on the continent we were not so much separated, but different regions had different expressions of our religion, the voodoo, Fan, Efe, and all that. Did we mimic that here in America? Or were we just blended when we came here?
So what happened was we were from different groups, but once we came here, we continued to practice fundamentally in the same fashion that we did when we were still on the continent. And that's manifest, and as you'll see in the broadcast, well, in the film, it is made manifest. Like the different broadcasts we've done on hoodoo, we're showing that we're using the same language, even though we don't speak the language fluently, but the titles of the specific functions and ritual practices and sacred observances and so forth, it turns out that these are all Akhan names, and the manner in which we practice all reflect Akhan tradition. So if an Akhan person came from the continent and saw somebody practicing hoodoo and asked what you were doing, and we started giving the names of Umbu and Kanche, or quote-unquote conjure, or use the term Hanks or Dumako, or all these different terms, they will recognize all of the different terms in the language. They will recognize the functions of the different people, some who are root workers, some who are root doctors, some who are, mediums, different ritual practices and different aspects of the tradition. They will be able to identify and realize that we maintained the culture the entire time. If somebody from Togo and Benin came to New Orleans and saw people practicing voodoo, they would see the same practice. If they saw somebody practicing juju and paid attention, they would see, wait a minute, this is the Yoruba tradition, because there are certain ways that we interface, based on our clan affiliation. Now, of course, when we come together here and we sometimes get married to different people in different, from different ethnic groups, certain things become blended, so to speak. But it's no different than if a Akhan person on the continent marries a Yoruba person on the continent. They both still have their traditions, and their children will understand and participate in both traditions and be leaning towards one more so than the other because they've incarnated from that side of the family, but they understand both and they have respect for both. The exact same kind of syncretism in that regard happened here. But it wasn't just a blending of culture and manufacturing a brand new culture that never existed, because that's unnecessary. We come into the world with a specific function in creation. We come connected to certain ancestral clans, matriclans and patriclans. That means we come into the world aligned with specific matriclan deities, patriclan deities, and the deity that governs our Kra. We have certain taboos and so forth. So that's all going to manifest no matter where we show up in the world. There may be a slight variation or expression of it because we're in a different part of the world, but we're still connected to the same matriclan deity, patriclan deity, and deity that governs the Kra. So we're still going to have certain fundamental expressions that are unique to Akhan people if we're Akhan, Yoruba people if we're Yoruba, Fang if we're Fang, and so forth. So we didn't just blend every culture into one and create a brand new culture that never existed. We still maintained our ancestral culture. And that's, people will really see that manifest in the film because, and it's very awakening because people realize that even though we were cut off from the continent, cut off from speaking the language fluently, we're still actually doing very often the exact same things in the exact same manner, even though we've been cut off for hundreds of years. So it just shows a continuity of culture, a transcarnational continuum of culture is proof that the Nsamanfo have been guiding us. So that's what I would say about that.
May I say, I was wondering about the specific region of the land, though. Like New Orleans is known for voodoo. Are there different places on this continent that we're drawn to, depending on which expression we are?
Now, it wouldn't be. There's a difference with regards to energy on different parts of the land. Like if you're in a riverine area, if you're in a mountainous region, like in Tennessee or something, the Smoky Mountains or whatever. If you're in a riverine area, if you're in a floodplain area, if you're in a hotter area, if you're in a cooler area and so forth, the different parts of North America, because of the different energy complexes in those different regions, we'll be drawn to certain areas and certain expressions of culture will be a reflection of the region that we're in. But that's not based on specifically clan. So it wouldn't be like New Orleans would draw more Fon and Ewe people. It wouldn't be based on clan. The reason it happened that way in New Orleans is because that's where we ended up with regard to enslavement. So we established ourselves there and continued to practice there. But no matter where we went, if there were Akhan people living in New Orleans as well, they continued Akhan ancestral religion. It was more of a predominance of Ewe and Fon and some Congo people, Bambara people as well. So that became more popular and dominant because it was more of them. But the different regions of the earth, yes, that will affect the expression of the culture. It wouldn't be specific to clan. Like it wouldn't be like in New Orleans they would draw specific clans in New Orleans as opposed to the Sea Islands. That was based on where we were dropped off or where we migrated to or where we escaped to, freed ourselves and established ourselves and so forth.
Okay, I was wondering, because I know when we did a lot of migrating from the South, it seems like a lot of people from Texas migrated to L.A., and then right. Some people migrated to Chicago, and some people migrated, further northeast. I was just wondering about, I don't know if they migrated according to what jobs were offered or if they felt something else. Because I know Africans in America are getting restless now, and a lot of people are talking about moving to different areas now. It seems like more of the same thing is going on. So I was wondering about the different, pools we were feeling.
Right, and you'll find that very often, similar to ancient Kemet, because they will call the quote-unquote Mississippi River the quote-unquote Nile of the West. Just like we will migrate up the river, we did the same thing like people in the South, Alabama, Mississippi, some parts of Louisiana. We migrate up the Mississippi River straight up through the Midwest and end up in Chicago and Detroit and places like that, other parts of Michigan. But then you have people a little bit further west. They travel other riverine areas and then they migrated because of other, being drawn towards the ocean, towards the west and so forth. So they ended up going from Texas to California and all of that. So yeah, we would be drawn in, on one hand, going up, following the river, following nature. But then because some people have migrated to certain areas, their people died in those areas, their bodies were buried in those areas. The areas became sacred to those people, and they were drawn to come. It's like one of the reasons, not only the weather that's drawing people that want to leave Chicago and Detroit and other northern cities, which that's part of it. And part of it is economics, but a major part of it is there are millions of ancestresses and ancestors whose bodies are buried in the South. And they're being drawn back to those ancestral shrines of their people, sometimes of themselves, which they may have lived 300 years ago and died in Alabama. They were buried in Alabama. Their spirit went to the ancestral realm in the so-called 1700s. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren and so forth continued to develop and grow and so forth over the next few centuries. And now they reincarnated through one of their descendants. And they ended up in Chicago, something like that. But their body is still buried in Alabama. So they're going to be drawn to where their body was and where their people operated and where they generated energy and where they built and established some things, because that's a sacred region for them. So therefore feel a pull to those regions for that reason. That's an unknown dynamic that many of our people understand but don't talk about in traditions. So that's a major influence, an unknown dynamic of where our bodies have been buried, our literal bodies that we previously inhabited, becoming a magnetic pull to us, not only to visit the continent, to those specific regions. We'll be drawn to one specific country over another one, because that's where we used to live, and a specific spot where our body was buried, but the same thing in the South, as well as in the North. Some people are drawn to certain areas in the North and West because our people went there, and sometimes we went there. And we're being drawn back to where we went. So that'll be something that comes up in the film as well, and that'll be explored in the film as well.
Okay, Mirase.
Okay, check to make sure we don't have any questions in the chat room. And if you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1. And if you look on when you look on the Adebisa AMARUKAFO Adebisa page on the fundraising site, you see much of the information that we talked about in the trailer. We have the trailer video posted from YouTube on that site as well. We also posted a Facebook version of the trailer on Facebook, and that's the one that's been getting many views right away. So please keep sharing that information, but also share with people that's key, right within our own community, right within just the community of people who've been studying information, reincorporating ancestral religious practices into their, lifestyle and so forth, and making it the foundation of their lives, transforming the outlook of their children. When you introduce to their own ancestral culture, not somebody else's ancestral culture, but our own, then they become very interested. Some become interested if it's just something general, just quote-unquote African or Pan-African, something like Kwanzaa or something like that. They just become a little bit interested, but some are not totally interested because they may see it has something to do with black people, but they don't see it having something to do specifically with them, specifically with their family, specifically with their people. But when we talk about our actual ancestral religion that we've had for hundreds of years, right here in our own blood circles, that's an extension of what we've done for thousands of years, and it's something that we own, and we're not dependent on going to the continent or somewhere else to come back and get a tradition because as if we never had anything. When children see that and see that we actually had a tradition, that's when they become very interested. And they want to return to the culture. They have questions. They want to embrace it. They want to explore it. So this is a way to transform the minds of our children and get them back on track. This is part of that Etchi sign process, ancestral religious reversion. This is going to be the first of a series of films dealing with that whole Etchi sign notion. There are many things that we have to cover, all the different broadcasts that we've done. We've done something like nearly 270 or more than 270 broadcasts touching on a number of different subjects. All of those subjects we've covered in these audio broadcasts. We have to cover, and that we've written about in our books. We also have to cover these subjects in film. So this is the first, that process. So we can go ahead and end the broadcast here if there are no other questions. But today is the beginning, the first day of the intensification of our fundraising effort, because we first have to get the equipment. So the professional equipment that we need to do a proper, very well done job. We don't want to do a halfway, presentation. We're going to do something that's, respectable and something that our children and our people will be very well received. They'll be very well informed, something that they're proud to see, proud to pass on. So we have to get the equipment first, and then we must move forward and start establishing these dates for these filming on location. So you can go right now to the fundraising page, make a contribution if you studied on our website, any of the downloads, any of the broadcasts. This is a time to invest in that process. Any donation amount is fine. It doesn't matter. $10, $5, $20, $50, whatever it is, $100, doesn't matter. We're just trying to raise those funds to get that first leg of the process going. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. Also, look at the information on the Echisign Conference. We still have a couple of tables left, and you can still place ads in the Journal for Business, your organization, or your institution. We have a special page for that on Facebook, and we also have a special page for the film project on Facebook as well. AMARUKAFO ADEBISA ADWUMADI. That's on Facebook as well. So we will continuously update everybody on Facebook, also on our Odwiraman network on all of the developments. But right now, just go to the page if you can, make a donation before sharing, donate, and then share. And Yedase, we thank everybody who's contributed so far and everybody who will contribute. Yedase for tuning into the broadcast. And Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's up.